Pray with me. Oh God, I pray that you would quiet these stammering lips this morning, so that Jesus, the truth of Jesus, might be made evident. Put me behind the cross, oh God, and get me out of the way. Amen. Wasn't long before today that the news went out. Jesus is dead. Jesus is dead. And when all the crowds who had gathered there for the spectacle saw what had taken place, they returned home beating their breasts. But some of his acquaintances, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance watching these things. These were rough times, folks. These people knew what dead looked like. They weren't fooled. Jesus was dead. Jesus did not have a pulse. No brainwave activity. Nothing. Jesus was dead. And he was so dead that the soldiers who were about to break his legs decided not to waste their time and energy on a dead man. His death was not rumor. This was not fake news. Jesus was quite emphatically dead, wrapped in a linen cloth and laid in a tomb. Then they rolled a massive stone over the entrance of the tomb, effectively sealing it. Even if there was a strong, alive man inside, the stone was going nowhere. But it's a moot point. Jesus is dead. On Easter morning at early dawn, the women walked to the tomb with the spices they had prepared. They were expecting death, not life. But when they arrived to anoint the body, they found the stone rolled away from the tomb, and when they ran inside, they were unable to find the body, which left them perplexed. Their hypothesis was Jesus was still dead. It didn't occur to them that he was alive. But at the empty tomb, two men in dazzling clothes suddenly appeared, and the women were terrified and bowed their heads. While the men said, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen." Was Jesus dead? No. No, he wasn't. According to the men. He's not here, but he has risen. Can you imagine it? The women couldn't absorb the news immediately. There was no way they could absorb it. Then they said, "Remember how he told you that while he was still alive in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified and on the third day rise again?" And the women began to recall those words of Jesus and to put together how both death and resurrection were part of the plan that Jesus had laid out for them. So the women returned from the tomb and told the 11 disciples as well as the rest of the followers of Jesus. And this is eyewitness testimony, says Luke. This is not hearsay. This is eyewitness testimony made by women who are well known and trustworthy in the community of Jesus' followers. But in spite of these testimonies, Luke says the women were unable to convince their friends. Their words to the apostles seemed to be an idle tale. And most of the men lent the words no credence whatsoever. And only Peter ran to see the evidence for himself. And he went home amazed at what had happened. That is, that Jesus' body was no longer in the tomb. And so at the end of Easter morning, we're left with the question. The same question we're left with today. Is Jesus dead? Some people say yes, based on the fact that Jesus was not spotted by any of his followers in the vicinity of the empty tomb. If Jesus were alive, he would have been spotted by someone in the area, but he wasn't. At least not in Matthew, Mark, and Luke's Gospels. Why? Because he's dead, that's why. But let's not ignore the testimony of the women and the two men at the empty tomb. These eyewitnesses are a compelling case for the resurrection. Their words and their actions teach us that life is not limited to Easter morning. Instead, it continues in our words and our actions even today. For starters, the resurrection is experienced whenever we focus on life instead of death. The two mysterious men asked the women a simple question, but an important one. Why do you look for the living among the dead? So often we look for death instead of life. People are naturally drawn to the stories of bloodshed and disaster and death. How many of you have ever rubbernecked going down the highway when there's been a terrible accident over in the other lane? And this is captured in the well-known Maximum news program. If it bleeds, it leads. But one of the signs of resurrection is a focus on life instead of death, which the women show when they take the message of the empty tomb back to the disciples. The children's television star Fred Rogers. Most all of us know who Mr. Rogers was. He was a Presbyterian minister, and his Christian faith infused all of Mr. Rogers' lessons. He kept his focus on the living, not the dead, especially in situations of tragedy and suffering. And one of the insights from his childhood, one of these insights came from his childhood. When he saw scary things on the news, his mother would always say to him, look at all the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. To this day, he said, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's comforting words, and I'm always comforted that there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in the world. As a believer in the resurrection, Rogers focused on life instead of death. And we also see the full story of see the resurrection when we remember the full story of Jesus' life, from his ministry in Galilee to his crucifixion to his resurrection. And even though the story is painful, even though it's painful, that story holds together. That story, the men in the dazzling clothes, holding Jesus and the empty tomb. That story, when the women remembered it, acted on it. And that story holds together And it gives us a pattern for understanding our own experiences of death and new life as individuals and communities. I've asked Michael to play and sing a song for us this morning. And then I want to tell you another resurrection story. This is a song that many of you know. Michael, would you?
I can only imagine what it'll be like when I walk by your side. I can only imagine what my eyes will see when your face is before me. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in all of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak it all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine when that day comes and I will find myself standing in the sun. I can only imagine when all I will do is forever worship you. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in all you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak it all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in all you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. 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 I can only imagine when all I will do is forever worship you. I can only imagine.
I know many of you have heard the song, I Can Only Imagine. It was written by Bart Millard, a contemporary Christian music group, Mercy Me. And the song explores what life in heaven might be like. First of all, we couldn't even begin to imagine if Jesus hadn't risen, could we? But what the song doesn't reveal is what a jerk Bart's father was. For years, Arthur Millard had beat his son, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week. Bart grew to hate his father, and the two became estranged. At one point, Arthur, his dad, converted to Christianity and then developed terminal cancer. And Bart decided to give his father a second chance at the relationship. My dad was a monster, and I saw God transform him, said Bart. You hear that? My dad was a monster, and I saw God transform him. Their story was painful, and it took a terminal illness to bring the two of them back together again. But the end of the story is resurrection, including the reconciliation of a father and the son, and the creation of a Christian song that has given hope and inspiration to millions and millions of people. That song inspires me, and I have that hope, but I can only imagine right now. So folks, I know it's hard to do in our culture today. I know it. So I turn the news off anymore. I very seldom watch the news. Let's stop looking for death instead of life. Let's do it. Let's stop looking for death instead of life. And let's follow Jesus Christ as we seek to understand our own experiences of death and new life. Quit putting folks down. Lift them up. Raise them up. Reconcile. We believe that Jesus is alive and seated at the right hand of God the Father on the throne. I can only imagine. But I have a hope that someday I'll see. And I have that hope for you who are gathered here this morning, that someday you'll see. But we also know that Jesus is not dead. This Easter morning we know that Jesus is not dead, because He's alive in us. Now,